Media Fact Checker. Today's Australian news. 19 stories. These are the stories in this video. Timestamps are shown if you would like to skip ahead. Story 1 of 19. Australian soccer player Adrian Segečić switches international allegiance from Australia to Croatia ahead of World Cup. Australian soccer player Adrian Segečić switches international allegiance from Australia to Croatia ahead of World Cup. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Adrian Segečić, a 21-year-old attacker, officially switched his international soccer allegiance from Australia to Croatia on Friday, visible on FIFA's change of association platform by Saturday. Segečić had represented Australia at under-17, under-20, and under-23 levels but never earned a senior cap for the Socceroos. Under FIFA rules, Segečić cannot switch back to Australia once he plays a match for Croatia. A request to FIFA's football tribunal would be required if he does not play for Croatia. Segečić scored 6 goals and provided 2 assists since joining Portsmouth in the English Championship. Croatia, ranked 11th in the world, has friendlies against Colombia and Brazil this month, with Segečić's debut timing unclear. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Segečić was called up for Australia's September window against New Zealand but did not play, while The Guardian does not mention this specific call-up. ABC notes Segečić was ruled out of the November window with an ankle injury, but The Guardian does not reference this injury timeline. The Guardian describes FA as blindsided by the switch, while ABC frames it as a surprise but does not use the term blindsided. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 2 of 19. House fire in Morphettville, Adelaide, results in fatality and police investigation. House fire in Morphettville, Adelaide, results in fatality and police investigation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A person was found dead inside a house fire in Morphettville, Adelaide's southern suburbs. The fire occurred on Dalby Avenue, Morphettville, at approximately 4:30 p.m. or 4:40 p.m. on Friday. Firefighters attended the scene and extinguished the blaze after 15 to 25 minutes of effort. Police and fire investigators are attending the scene to determine the fire's cause. Detectives from SA Police are involved in the investigation. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the fire was called at just after 4:30 p.m., while Newscomau states it was at about 4:40 p.m. ABC does not mention the number of firefighters, while Newscomau specifies more than a dozen, 13. Newscomau describes the fire as taking 15 minutes to contain and 10 minutes to extinguish, but ABC does not provide this timeline. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 3 of 19. Darwin water crisis due to Darwin River Dam pump failure and boil water alert. Darwin water crisis due to Darwin River Dam pump failure and boil water alert. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Darwin River Dam's pumping station was overwhelmed by floodwater on Monday, April 29, 2024, knocking out the city's main water supply. The failure occurred at 4:30 p.m. on Monday, but the public was not officially notified until 8:30 p.m. via texts, social media, and media releases. Residents were instructed to boil tap water for drinking starting Tuesday morning, April 30, 2024, due to potential contamination from borefield water sources. The boil water alert was lifted on Thursday, May 2, 2024, after testing confirmed water was free of E. coli and harmful bacteria. Darwin River Dam has been the city's main water source since 1972, supplying over 40,000 megalitres annually. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the public was notified of the pump failure at 4:30 p.m. on Monday, but Article 2 clarifies notification was delayed until 8:30 p.m. Article 1 mentions the boil water alert was in place for 48 hours, until Wednesday afternoon, while Article 2 states it lasted until Thursday afternoon. Article 1 reports PwC CEO Kylie Collins as the spokesperson, but Article 2 names John Peace as the CEO addressing the crisis. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 4 of 19. US temporarily lifts sanctions on Russian oil amid Iran war and global price surge. US temporarily lifts sanctions on Russian oil amid Iran war and global price surge. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US temporarily waived sanctions on approximately 124 to 130 million barrels of Russian oil stranded at sea, allowing purchases for 30 days, expires April 11th. The waiver applies only to oil loaded on tankers before March 12, 2024, and is framed as a short-term measure to stabilize prices. Brent crude oil prices surpassed $100 per barrel for the first time since August 2022, reaching $100.74 on Friday after the announcement. Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical global shipping route for oil, according to US officials cited by both sources. The US-Israel military operation against Iran has led to Iran vowing to block all oil exports from the region and threatening to raise prices to $200 per barrel. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 124 million barrels of Russian oil at sea, while SMH cites 130 million barrels, with regional breakdowns. The Guardian states Trump previously claimed India had agreed to stop purchasing Russian oil, but SMH notes the US later permitted Indian refiners to buy it for 30 days. The Guardian does not mention Trump's direct derogatory remarks about Iran's leaders as deranged scumbags, which SMH includes verbatim. This story was covered by The Guardian and Sydney Morning Herald. Story 5 of 19. NSW and Victoria governments introduce laws to combat property underquoting and improve price transparency. NSW and Victoria governments introduce laws to combat property underquoting and improve price transparency. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW will introduce legislation this week forcing property sellers to advertise price guides on all listings. NSW agents caught underquoting will face fines of up to $110,000 or 3 times their commission, whichever is greater. The Sydney Morning Herald and The Age previously reported that 48% of Sydney property sales tracked sold above the advertised price guide by more than 10%, with 16% selling above by 20% or more. NSW Fair Trading Minister Anulak Chant Hivong stated the reforms aim to protect homebuyers from unscrupulous real estate agents and create a fair property market. Victorian government announced plans to mandate disclosure of sold property prices, with implementation set for 2027. But not all outlets told the same story. The Sydney Morning Herald states that NSW reforms do not require vendor reserves to align with advertised price guides, while The Guardian does not mention this exemption. The Age reports that Victoria will implement sold price disclosure by 2027, but the Sydney Morning Herald and The Guardian do not specify a timeline for Victoria's reforms. The Age claims that the Victorian government will require vendors to pay for mandatory building and pest inspections if re-elected, but this is not mentioned in the other sources. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 6 of 19. Chelsea's 5-2 Champions League defeat to PSG highlights goalkeeper Filip Jörgensen's error and tactical missteps. Chelsea's 5-2 Champions League defeat to PSG highlights goalkeeper Filip Jörgensen's error and tactical missteps. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Filip Jörgensen was selected over Robert Sanchez as Chelsea's goalkeeper for the match at Parc des Princes. PSG won 5-2 against Chelsea in the Champions League last 16-second leg at Parc des Princes. Kvicha Kvaratskhelia scored 2 goals and provided an assist for PSG in the match. Filip Jörgensen made a game-changing error in the 75th minute, allowing PSG to score via Vitinha's lob. Chelsea came from behind twice, equalizing once in the first half and again in the second half before collapsing. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 says Kvaratskhelia scored 2 goals and an assist, while Article 2 only mentions 2 goals and an assist, implied but not explicitly stated. Article 1 states Kvaratskhelia scored his first goal on 86 minutes, while Article 2 does not specify the exact minute for his first goal. Article 1 describes Chelsea's midfield as an endless full-contact pirouette in search of space, while Article 2 does not mention this specific phrasing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 7 of 19. Former AFL footballer Barry Cable's child sex abuse trial and allegations. Former AFL footballer Barry Cable's child sex abuse trial and allegations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Barry Cable, 82, is on trial in Perth for 5 counts of indecent dealing with a girl under 13 and 2 counts of unlawful carnal knowledge of a girl under 13, dating to the late 1960s. The alleged victim was approximately 8 to 10 years old when abuse allegedly occurred at Barry Cable's home in Perth's southeast suburbs. Helen Cable, Barry's wife of 61 years, testified in court denying the girl ever stayed at their home, stating never happened multiple times. The alleged victim told the court Barry Cable touched her and made her do stuff to him, sexually, and threatened her with "they wouldn't believe me because he was Barry Cable if she told anyone." Barry Cable did not testify in his own defense, and the trial concluded with closing arguments on Friday, Article 1, or by late Thursday, Article 3. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states Helen Cable said she had not heard of the orphanage where the girl was staying until recently, but Article 3, Newscomau, does not mention this detail. Article 1, ABC, includes a warning about the distressing nature of the story, while Article 3, Newscomau, does not mention this warning. Article 1, ABC, mentions Helen Cable's response to documents from the early 1970s as never happened but does not specify the exact phrasing of her denial regarding the orphanage visit. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 8 of 19. Australian government inquiry into South Korean intercountry adoption fraud and abuse scandals. Australian government inquiry into South Korean intercountry adoption fraud and abuse scandals. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian government launched a 6-month internal inquiry into the Korea-Australia intercountry adoption program in 2024, focusing on adoptions from 1964 to 1999. South Korea's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, 2023 report found large-scale fraud in adoption records, including fabricated birth certificates, lost falsified documents, and lack of proper consent. The Eastern Social Welfare Society, ESWS, South Korea's adoption agency, was involved in sending 3 600-plus children to Australia and faced allegations of baby trafficking and document forgery. Rosemary Smith, 39, NSW, became the first Australian adoptee to have her adoption nullified in 2024 after proving she suffered physical and sexual abuse from her adoptive parents. South Korea sent approximately 200,000 children internationally since the Korean War, 1953, earning the reputation as the world's largest baby exporter. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Rosemary Smith was the first Australian adoptee to have her adoption nullified, while Article 2 does not mention her case specifically. Article 1 reports the Australian inquiry will run for 6 months, but Article 2 does not specify the duration of the inquiry. Article 1 highlights that Rosemary's adoption was nullified due to abuse and exceptional circumstances, while Article 2 focuses more on systemic fraud in adoption records without emphasizing abuse as a primary factor in nullification cases. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 9 of 19. UK PM Keir Starmer's controversial appointment of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador amid Epstein ties. UK PM Keir Starmer's controversial appointment of Peter Mandelson as US Ambassador amid Epstein ties. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Peter Mandelson was appointed UK Ambassador to the US in December 2024 by Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Mandelson was sacked as U.S. ambassador in September 2024 after revelations of his long-standing friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, including staying at Epstein's house while he was jailed in June 2009. Documents show Starmer was warned about Mandelson's reputational risks due to Epstein links, China ties, and prior resignations from government roles. Mandelson initially demanded a £547,201 severance payment after being fired but was offered £75,000, described as a reasonable settlement. Mandelson resigned from the House of Lords in February 2024 over Epstein links and was arrested in October 2024 on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Starmer's director of communications was happy with Mandelson's Epstein responses, while The Guardian implies concerns remained unaddressed. ABC claims future documents will prove Mandelson lied to Starmer about Epstein ties, but The Guardian does not explicitly confirm this claim. The Guardian notes Mandelson's employment lawyer questioned the reasonableness of Starmer's dismissal, while ABC does not mention this legal challenge. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Story 10 of 19. Michael Rowland's career exit from ABC and family relocation to Queensland. Michael Rowland's career exit from ABC and family relocation to Queensland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael Rowland left ABC News Breakfast after 15 years in December 2024. Rowland quit the ABC entirely in February 2025 after 39 years of service. Rowland and his wife Nicola Webber sold their family home in Yarraville, Melbourne, after 23 years. Rowland and Webber are moving to Tewantin, Queensland, near Noosa, effective February 28, 2025. Rowland's wife Nicola Webber suffered a mystery bowel-related illness, not cancer, in 2024, which impacted their plans. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 11 of 19. Real Madrid's 3-0 Champions League first leg win over Manchester City, featuring Valverde's hat-trick. Real Madrid's 3-0 Champions League first leg win over Manchester City, featuring Valverde's hat-trick. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Federico Valverde scored a first-half hat-trick, 22 minutes, for Real Madrid against Manchester City in the Champions League first leg, ending 3-0 at half-time. Kylian Mbappé was absent from Real Madrid's squad due to injury, leaving a 13-goal-shaped hole in their attack. Mbappé led the competition in scoring with 13 strikes. Erling Haaland returned to Manchester City's lineup after being rested for the FA Cup win at Newcastle. The match took place at the Santiago Bernabéu Stadium on a Tuesday night, kick-off at 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Thibaut Courtois played for Real Madrid, while Gianluigi Donnarumma kept goal for Manchester City. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 says Real missed Rodrigo, Jude Bellingham, Alvaro Carreras, and Eder Militao, while Article 3 does not mention these absences. Article 1 describes City's formation as ultra-attacking with Alexander-Arnold's right-back flank targeted, while Article 4 calls it overloading with 3 wingers without mentioning Alexander-Arnold's flank specifically. Article 2 says Valverde's first goal was a 3-touch, 100-yard run from a Courtois long pass, while Article 1 describes it as a diagonal downfield pass from Courtois to Valverde on the full. This story was covered by The Guardian. Story 12 of 19. Atlassian announces global job cuts driven by AI disruption and financial pressures. Atlassian announces global job cuts driven by AI disruption and financial pressures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Atlassian cut 1,600 jobs globally, 10% of workforce, as part of its largest restructure in company history. About 480 of the 1,600 job cuts, 30%, were in Australia, affecting Atlassian's 3,500-strong local workforce. CEO Mike Cannon-Brookes announced the layoffs via a pre-recorded video message to staff on Thursday, April 11, 2024. Atlassian's share price fell 66% over the past 12 months, closing at $75.45, 105 Australian dollars, on the day of the announcement. The restructuring is estimated to cost Atlassian between $225 million and $236 million in severance and exit charges. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, suggests AI is an excuse for broader corporate restructures, while Atlassian's official statements frame it as a strategic AI adaptation. The Australian, via The Age, reports a secret lunchtime crisis meeting influenced the cuts, but Atlassian denied its significance. Newscom Australia claims Cannon-Brookes couldn't be more bullish about AI opportunities despite selling shares daily, while other sources highlight investor skepticism. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 13 of 19. Billionaire Adrian Portelli's expansion of LMCT Plus into UK and Australia's petrol gambling ventures sparking gambling reform debates. Billionaire Adrian Portelli's expansion of LMCT Plus into UK and Australia's petrol gambling ventures sparking gambling reform debates. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Adrian Portelli, 33, is expanding his subscription-based prize draw business LMCT Plus into the UK, setting up a London company, originally Powerball Portelli Limited, now Exclusive Tech Limited, in June 2024, mirroring the Australian Exclusive Tech Party Limited structure. Portelli's LMCT business in Australia operates under legal loopholes in state gambling regulations, excluding South Australia, where it faced legal action for running an illegal lottery. LMCT members pay monthly fees of up to $99 for access to partner business discounts and prize draws, including supercars, cash prizes of up to $2 million, and multimillion-dollar houses. Portelli's wealth is estimated at $1.6 billion, and his business has 2 million social media fans in Australia. Anti-gambling advocates in the UK and Australia warn LMCT exploits regulatory gaps, classifying it as a raffle rather than a harmful gambling product, with concerns over accessibility in family-friendly locations like petrol stations and shopping centres. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Story 14 of 19. Mass redundancies at Tahmoor Colliery under GFG Alliance liquidation. Mass redundancies at Tahmoor Colliery under GFG Alliance liquidation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tahmoor Colliery in southwest Sydney announced 238 permanent redundancies on February 6, 2025, following liquidation. The mine was placed into liquidation by the NSW Supreme Court on February 6, 2025, after 14 months of mothballed operations. GFG Alliance, owned by billionaire Sanjeev Gupta, faced $250 million in related party debt leading to the liquidation. Workers were offered a choice between immediate redundancy or 6 weeks of unpaid leave while the mine's sale is considered. The mine has been non-operational since February 2024, with operations halted due to financial instability. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the mine entered voluntary administration in August 2024, while Article 2 does not mention this specific timeline for voluntary administration. Article 1 mentions the winding up application began in August 2024, but Article 2 does not specify this exact month for the application. Article 1 reports the mine's sale process will run for around 12 weeks, implied, while Article 2 does not provide a specific timeline for the sale process. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 15 of 19. Australia's rabbit population crisis and biocontrol failures. Australia's rabbit population crisis and biocontrol failures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The current feral rabbit population in Australia is estimated at over 200 million, per both ABC articles. The calicivorous biocontrol, released in 2017, reduced rabbit numbers by around 60%, but resistance is now growing, per ABC, Article 1 and 2. The Invasive Species Council of Australia, ISC, and CSIRO are developing a new biocontrol virus, requiring federal funding, per ABC, Article 1 and 2. Federal government funding for rabbit biocontrol research was cut in 2022, halting the Rabbit Biocontrol Pipeline Project, per ABC, Article 1. Rabbit hemorrhagic disease calicivorus was accidentally introduced to Australia in 1995 via Wardang Island trials, per ABC, Article 2. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the calicivorus wiped out 60% of rabbits in 2017, while Article 2 implies the 60% reduction occurred after the 1995 calicivorus release, no specific year given. Article 1 claims the French-origin calicivorus strain, detected in 2015, is now dominant in Australia, but Article 2 does not mention its dominance or impact on resistance. Article 1 reports the federal government cut biocontrol funding in 2022, while Article 2 does not explicitly state the year of funding cuts but focuses on historical context. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 16 of 19. A vehicle ramming and active shooter attack at a Michigan synagogue kills the suspect with no casualties among staff or children. A vehicle ramming and active shooter attack at a Michigan synagogue kills the suspect with no casualties among staff or children. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The attack occurred at Temple Israel in West Bloomfield Township, Oakland County, Michigan, about 25 to 30 miles northwest of Detroit. A vehicle was driven into the synagogue, crashing through doors and causing a fire. The vehicle was on fire after the incident. Security guards confronted the suspect and engaged him in gunfire, killing the male suspect before any casualties occurred among synagogue staff or children. No children or synagogue staff were injured during the attack, only the suspect was killed and a security guard was hit by the car and hospitalized. Multiple law enforcement agencies responded, including Oakland County Sheriff's Office, Michael Bouchard, FBI, ATF, and Michigan State Police. But not all outlets told the same story. SBS and Guardian report no injuries to synagogue staff or children, but News.com.au implies a security guard was injured, though it says rushed to hospital without confirming injury. News.com.au states the vehicle contained explosives, but this detail is not mentioned in SBS or Guardian. Guardian reports the suspect's death was confirmed by police sources, while News.com.au says the cause of death remains unclear. This story was covered by The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Story 17 of 19. Northern Territory flood disaster relief payments and community impacts in Katherine and surrounding areas. Northern Territory flood disaster relief payments and community impacts in Katherine and surrounding areas. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Disaster payments have been expanded to include residents in Litchfield and Coomera LGAs, Beswick Woolloongabba, and Gilkmingan due to wet season flooding around Darwin River Dam, Article 1. Immediate relief payments of up to $611 per adult and $309 per child are available to residents of Katherine, Beswick, and Gilkmingan, Article 1, Article 2. Temporary accommodation grants of $1,160 are part of the disaster assistance payments, Article 1, Article 2. The Godinamay Yijard Rivers Arts and Culture Centre on the Stuart Highway is the primary distribution site for payments in Katherine, Article 1, Article 2. A boil water alert remains in place for Katherine and Gilkmingan due to damaged sewage infrastructure, Article 1, Article 2. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states that eligibility criteria for Litchfield and Coomera LGAs is yet to be updated, while Article 2 does not mention these areas at all. Article 1 mentions that payments for all other residents in Katherine will commence from Friday morning, But Article 2 does not specify a timeline for when payments will resume after the sewerage issue. This story was covered by ABC News. Story 18 of 19. Murder charge against woman for killing Katherine Sanowski in Ipswich home. Murder charge against woman for killing Katherine Sanowski in Ipswich home. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 42-year-old woman named Katherine Sanowski was found dead inside a home on Beryl Court, Belbird Park, Ipswich, on February 19, 2024, having been deceased for approximately 2 weeks. A 34-year-old woman was found at the scene on February 19 and taken to hospital for a medical assessment. Police were initially called to Beryl Court at around 11:30 a.m. on February 19 due to reports of a street disturbance. The post-mortem revealed suspicious circumstances, escalating the investigation from a disturbance to a homicide case. A GoFundMe was launched by Rowena Clark to support Katherine Sanowski's grieving family, including her young child. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the accused is due to appear at Ipswich Magistrates Court this afternoon on March 12, but ABC does not specify the time of the court appearance. News Kamau mentions the charge was confirmed by Queensland Police on Tuesday, March 12, while ABC states the charge was laid 1 month after the body was found without specifying the exact date. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Story 19 of 19. Analysis of the Iran conflict and its geopolitical winners amid US-Iran tensions under Trump. Analysis of the Iran conflict and its geopolitical winners amid US-Iran tensions under Trump. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Islamic Republic of Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei was assassinated in an opening strike of the war, with his son Mujtaba Khomeini reportedly injured in the same strike and now considered the successor as supreme leader at age 56. Iran continues to fire drones and missiles at Israel and Arab neighbors, including controlling access to the Strait of Hormuz, which has raised oil prices by approximately 40% since hostilities began. US President Donald Trump relaxed sanctions on Russia's oil exports in response to surging oil prices, despite the sanctions being imposed to starve Russia's war chest in Ukraine. The Pentagon warned Trump in advance that Iran could close the Strait of Hormuz, but he dismissed the risk, stating Iran would surrender before blocking oil flows. Public support for Israel's involvement in the war stands at 82% overall and 93% among Jewish Israelis, according to a poll by the Israel Democracy Institute. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two articles as they are nearly identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.